There's something unsettling about gas stations in the middle of nowhere, especially at midnight. The flickering fluorescent lights, the empty roads, and the silence of the night create an eerie atmosphere that most people would rather avoid. But for Brandon and Kyle, it was just another stop on their long drive home from a weekend camping trip. The road stretched for miles, without a hint of civilization, and their gas tank was dangerously close to empty. When they saw the glowing sign of a gas station up ahead, relief washed over them. The station sat alone in the darkness, its neon lights barely cutting through the fog that had begun to settle over the road. The place looked old, like it hadn't been updated in decades. A single rusty pump stood under a crumbling canopy, and the windows of the small convenience store were dark and smudged with dirt. "I guess this is our only option," Brandon said as he pulled into the lot, the tires crunching on the gravel. Kyle nodded, glancing around. "Yeah, but let's make it quick. This place gives me the creeps." Brandon parked near the pump and got out to fill the tank, while Kyle stayed in the car, scrolling through his phone. The wind had picked up and the only sound was the low hum of the pump and the occasional rustling of leaves in the nearby trees. There was no one else around. No other cars, no lights from any nearby buildings, just the two of them in the middle of nowhere. As Brandon stood by the pump, he noticed something odd. The air around him felt different, thicker, almost oppressive. The hair on the back of his neck stood up, and he had the distinct feeling that he was being watched. He glanced around, but the only movement was the flickering light above the gas pump. "Let's go, man," Kyle called from inside the car, sensing his friend's unease. "This place is weird." Brandon nodded, quickly finishing up. He replaced the nozzle and was about to get back into the car when something caught his eye. At the edge of the lot, just beyond the glow of the gas station's lights, a figure stood in the shadows. It was barely visible, blending into the darkness like it didn't want to be seen. Brandon squinted, trying to get a better look, but the figure didn't move. "Hey, you see that?" Brandon asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kyle leaned forward, following Brandon's gaze. "What? I don't see anything." "There's someone over there by the trees." Kyle stared for a moment, then shook his head. "Dude, there's no one there. You're just freaked out because this place is sketchy." Brandon wasn't convinced. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine as he kept his eyes on the figure. It was still there, unmoving, watching. "Let's just go," Brandon said, his voice tight with anxiety. They both jumped into the car and Brandon started the engine. As the headlights flicked on, they illuminated the area ahead of them. The figure was gone. "Did you see that?" Brandon asked, his voice shaky. Kyle looked around nervously. "No, man, I told you there's no one here." Without wasting another second, Brandon slammed the car into gear and pulled out of the lot. The tires spun on the gravel as they sped down the empty highway, the gas station quickly fading into the fog behind them. But even as they put distance between themselves and the creepy gas station, the unsettling feeling lingered. A few miles down the road, Kyle broke the silence. "That was freaky, but it's probably just some homeless guy hanging around the station." Brandon didn't respond. His knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them, even though the gas station was long behind them. The car's dashboard lights flickered, and the engine made a strange sputtering noise. "Don't tell me we're having car trouble now," Kyle groaned, leaning back in his seat. But Brandon didn't answer. His eyes widened as he glanced at the rearview mirror. In the dim reflection, he saw it again, just for a moment. A figure standing on the side of the road, barely illuminated by the fading taillights of the car. It was the same figure from the gas station, but this time it was closer, as if it had followed them. "Dude, what's wrong?" Kyle asked, sensing Brandon's fear. Brandon's voice trembled as he spoke. "There's someone behind us. I saw them again." Kyle's face paled. He turned around, but the road was empty. "Brandon, there's no one there. You're freaking me out, man." Brandon swallowed hard, his heart racing. "I know what I saw." The car continued down the road, the night growing darker and more oppressive with each passing minute. The wind howled outside and the fog thickened, swallowing the headlights as they drove deeper into the night. Suddenly, the car's headlights flickered and went out completely, plunging them into total darkness. The engine sputtered once more before dying. "No, no, no," Brandon muttered, frantically turning the key in the ignition. The engine refused to start. Kyle sat up, his voice shaking. "What the hell is happening?" Before they could react, a loud knock came from the back window. Both of them froze, too terrified to turn around. "Did you hear that?" Kyle whispered. Brandon nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. Another knock, louder this time, echoed through the car. Slowly, Kyle turned to look at the back window. His eyes widened in terror as he saw the figure standing inches away, its face pressed against the glass. Pale, gaunt, and expressionless, the figure's hollow eyes stared directly at him. Kyle let out a scream, and Brandon turned the key again, praying the engine would start. After what felt like an eternity, the car roared to life, and Brandon floored the gas pedal, speeding down the road as fast as he could. The figure disappeared into the fog behind them, but the fear lingered. They didn't stop driving until they reached the next town, and even then, they couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had followed them from that gas station wasn't done with them yet. What do you think was lurking at that gas station? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying true stories.